If your offer isn't selling, the internet will happily give you 47 reasons why. Your messaging is off. Your pricing is wrong. Your audience is too cold. Your content isn't good enough. You need more urgency, a better funnel, a stronger hook, a cleaner call to action, a webinar, a challenge, a masterclass, and a partridge in a pear tree. And sometimes, those things are true. But sometimes your offer is not the problem at all. Sometimes the real problem is that you have been handed advice built for a completely different type of buyer and then blamed yourself when it didn't work. So today we're talking about why your offer isn't selling and why it's probably not for the reason you think. Because if you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things and still not getting the result, this episode might explain why. Before we get into the episode, I want to do a quick recap with you, because if you're new here or if you've missed episode 1, I want to make sure this lands properly. A few weeks ago, I started a series called The Good Advice Trap. And the whole premise is this. There's a lot of advice in online business land that is actually good advice, like genuinely good advice, useful, smart, proven advice. The problem isn't that the advice is bad. The problem is that the people hand it around like it's universally true, when actually it only works under certain conditions. Build your email list, run a live launch, show up on social media, create consistent content. Good advice, true advice, advice that works for someone at some stage in some context. The problem is that by the time it reaches you, the context gets stripped away. Nobody tells you the conditions that has to be true first. Nobody tells you the stage your business needs to be at before it applies. Nobody tells you the one thing that has to exist before any of it makes sense. But you follow the advice. You do the thing. You follow the steps, you buy the template, you write the emails, you run the launch. And then it flops. And you think, cool, amazing. So maybe I am the problem. No, please don't think like that. You are not the problem. You've just been trying to force someone else's strategy into your business and wondering why it feels like you're wearing jeans that's 2 sizes too small. You were given a map, yes. Except maybe the map was for an entirely different continent. And that's the good advice trap. This is episode 2 of 7. And in next week's episode, I'm going to share why you're creating more and more content, but going nowhere slowly. We're also going to talk about why more followers don't automatically mean more money, because those two things are not nearly as married as the internet would like you to believe. And we'll talk about the launch mistakes you don't even realize you're making yet, and why they're probably or possibly costing you more than the obvious stuff. And I want to hear from you. If any of this is hitting a nerve, or if you're sitting there going, WTF is going on? Email me, podcast@thelaunchlounge.com, and tell me what's keeping you stuck from growing right now. I'll put it through the good advice trap test, and if it fits, we'll talk about it on the show. Now, let me share Laura's story with you. I want to read you Laura's email. Laura says, "Hi, Salome. I love the podcast and I listen to it every week." Thanks, Laura. "I'd love it if you could help me identify the theme to this problem and cover it in your podcast. I have 35,000 people on my email list, and they are not buying. But the more I look at it, the more I think the standard online business advice just doesn't fit my situation. I sell to schools. Each purchase requires approval from multiple stakeholders, a formal purchase order process, and a lot of institutional red tape. My program costs between $2,500 and $4,000 for a year of support. Nobody pulls out a credit card for that. Schools are also used to bringing in consultants for live, in-person training, not buying online programs. And right now, federal funding cuts are making budgets even tighter. When I run live launches, purchases trickle in, and less each time. I show up on social media, but I hate it. I try to create content, but my audience doesn't want off-the-cuff influencer-style videos. They want polished, scripted, professional resources they can actually use with their staff. I feel like I've been following advice that was built for a completely different type of business, and I don't know what to do instead. Laura. Laura, thank you so much for this incredible letter. I want to let you know that you are not doing it wrong. You've been given the wrong map. Let me show you what I mean. The standard advice says, create urgency. Cart closes Friday. Don't miss out. Laura's buyer is a school. A school cannot whip out the corporate Amex because your cart timer turned orange. Not even close. That process involves meetings, stakeholders, budget committees, sometimes board approvals, sometimes grant applications. The whole thing can take months. Cart closes Friday doesn't create urgency for that buyer. It does create the impression that Laura perhaps doesn't understand how schools work, which is the last impression you want when you're trying to build an institutional trust. And the social media problem is the same. The school principal looking for professional development support for their teachers is not scrolling Instagram looking for a course to buy. They're at a conference. They're talking to a colleague who already solved this problem. They're asking their professional network who they trust. The buying decision for Laura's buyer doesn't happen on Instagram. It happens in a room. Word of mouth, peer referral, speaking at events where school leaders actually gather, getting written about in the publications they actually read. This is how institutional buyers buy. Laura has already started figuring this out herself. She's switching to evergreen instead of cart close launches. She's extending her support to a full year instead of 8 weeks. She's moving away from a leadership academy model towards teacher training because that's what schools actually ask for. And she's questioning whether the influencer-style social media strategy is the right fit for a buyer who hires authors, professors, and credentialed experts. And honestly, she's right on all of it. Almost all the online business advice you've been given was built for one type of buyer. One person, one credit card, one Friday deadline. If that's not your buyer, the advice isn't just unhelpful, it can actively make things worse. Think about the standard course creator playbook. Build your list, run a live launch, create urgency, cart closes Friday, last chance, don't miss out. That playbook was built for a very specific buyer. One person, one decision, one moment of yes or no, and one credit card. I don't care if you sell direct to consumers, B2C, like makeup tutorials or watercolor painting, or if you sell B2B, like me, meta ads for course creators, or business coaching, or copywriting. If the person with the credit card is still just one person with all the authority to buy, that playbook can work. For a lot of businesses, including mine and probably yours, that buyer is real and that playbook works. But what if your buyer is an institution? What if the person who takes your course isn't the person who pays for it? What if the person holding the budget has never heard of you, never watched your webinar, and needs 3 committee approvals before they can spend a cent? Cart closes Friday means nothing to that buyer. It doesn't create urgency. It creates maybe a side eye and distrust because it signals that you don't understand how they operate. And this is the most important thing I'm going to say today. Before you change your offer, before you rewrite your sales page again, before you run another launch or hire another ads person or take another course about funnels, do this one thing. Find 3 people. 3 people who are selling a similar course or program to yours, to a similar audience, successfully through social media. Not people with big followings in your niche. Not speakers who sell from stages. Not authors with traditional publishing deals and morning TV appearances. Not consultants whose Instagram is just a credibility badge, but not a sales channel. People who are selling the way you are trying to sell, direct, digital, online, without a live stage or a book deal backing them up. 3 people. Let me give you an example of this. I had a few students and even clients who are interior designers. And I have to tell you, I am yet to find a course on interior design that sells successfully on social media. If you don't believe me, find me one. I would love to be wrong about this. And I'm not talking about the one that sells successfully on Udemy. Not one that sells successfully because the creator has a TV show. That is a different business model. I have not found one, not a single one, not one lonely scatter cushion course crushing it from Instagram ads. What does sell is a course built for interior designers on how to build a successful business. But how to scatter cushions or redo a room without remodeling or how to change the drapes? Not one. Another example of this is decluttering. If your name is not Marie Kondo, I would like you to lower your expectations immediately. If you can find them, great. Study what they're doing. Figure out what's working and why is it working. But if you cannot find 3 examples of people successfully selling online using your business model, stop right there. Because that is telling you something really important. It's telling you that either the market doesn't exist on social media or the market exists, but it's not buying the way you're trying to sell. And no amount of better content, better funnels, or better ads will fix that. Now, I can already hear some of you say, but Salome, there are people in my niche with massive followings selling courses. Maybe, but look closer. How are they actually making money? Are they selling from stages at conferences? Are they authors who built their credibility through a traditionally published book, meaning they got paid before they wrote the book? And the book got reviewed in real media. Are they specialist coaches who built their client base through referrals and word of mouth? And they just use Instagram as a shop window, not a sales engine. A big social media following and a successful online course business are not the same thing. You need to find people who have what you are trying to build, not people who look like they do. A while ago, one of the parents of one of my kids' friends came to me and told me he had a lead for me. Now, this guy is financial something. I don't know exactly what he does. He starts talking and I'm bored, but I like his wife, so we hang out anyway. But, it looks like he's very successful at what he does, whatever it is in finance. So I was curious about this client of his that he was referring to me. He told me that his client is a masterful marketer and she has a great idea for a course and she wants my help to launch it. So I told him he could give her my number and I'd be happy to chat. Turns out, this woman is a master of marketing. So much so that she was the VP of marketing for a very large multinational company for years. Her course idea? To teach other marketing execs how to do what she did. And in a funny and ridiculous twist, she was absolutely shocked when I told her, unfortunately, no one is looking for that on social media. The person you'll be teaching is not the person who buys the course. And the person who's paying for the training, usually in this case, the HR manager, is not looking for the solution on Instagram. And also, you need to learn to write copy that sounds like a human, not like a marketing VP, because she was writing copy that broke my simple brain. It sounded like it wanted to circle back and leverage cross-functional synergies and put a pin in literally every sentence. And I was like, ma'am, this is not copy. This is corporate casserole. Yikes. You know what I mean, right? She just wasn't trained to speak to people directly on the internet, not real people. I'm sure she's good at talking to real people. And that language will never get clicks on social media and even less on ads. So there she was, real expertise, good idea, a buyer that definitely exists, and absolutely no path to reach that buyer the way she was planning to reach them. The buyer wasn't on Instagram. The decision wasn't made in a webinar. And the copy was written for a boardroom, not for a scroll. I had to tell her, this is not a course launch problem. This is a distribution problem. And no amount of better funnels or better ads is going to fix it until you figure out where your buyer actually lives and how they actually make the buying decision. And then she asked me if I'll create the marketing for her, to which I replied, I'll need to take a wide view, leverage our synergies and run it up the flagpole and pressure test the idea first. Just kidding. That was the easiest hard no of my life. My point is this. The advice said to build a course, launch it, run ads. The advice wasn't wrong in general. It just had nothing to do with her actual situation. The buyer existed, the expertise was real, the course idea was good, but the sales channel she was planning to use had almost no chance of reaching that buyer in the right context. And her copy was written for the boardroom, not for a scroll. That is the good advice trap, applied perfectly to completely the wrong situation. Now, let's talk about social media, because Show up more on social media is probably the most universal piece of advice in online business land. And it has a giant hidden assumption buried inside it. The assumption is that your buyer is on that platform in a frame of mind to engage with your content, and that the platform rewards the kind of content that builds your type of authority. None of those things are guaranteed. So let's be real about what these platforms are right now. Instagram and TikTok are interruption platforms. Nobody opened the app thinking, you know what I'd love today? Maybe a nuanced take on my business model that I can watch for 12 minutes. No, someone is scrolling. They want to be entertained. They're not looking for you. They didn't come here to think about their business problems. You have about 7 seconds to keep their attention. And if you do, great. You've reached someone who didn't know you existed. Maybe they'll follow you. Maybe they'll watch more. Maybe eventually they'll end up on your email list. And that is the top of your funnel. That's brand awareness. That's not a warm, ready-to-buy lead. Or maybe you're a subject matter expert. You have 10 years or more of knowledge in your head. And diluting that into a 7-second entertainment clip that doesn't make you look like you've lost your mind is genuinely hard. And sometimes it feels a tiny little bit soul-destroying, doesn't it? So you either get no reach because the algorithm doesn't reward serious content the way it rewards entertainment, or you get reach from entirely the wrong people, and both are frustrating. Both are really common, and neither means you're doing it wrong. It just means the platform has changed on you. LinkedIn, I can say, is different. People go there with professional intent. Long-form ideas land there. Authority-based content, the kind that says, I have studied this problem deeply and here's what I know. It gets traction without needing to be disguised as entertainment. Now, the numbers there look way less impressive. But the people who find you are already mid-funnel by default. YouTube is its own thing entirely. And I want to spend a moment on this because it's more complicated than people think. YouTube is still the number 2 search engine on the internet. If you understand what your audience is actively searching for, you can show up at the exact moment they're looking for help. That is incredibly powerful. But YouTube is also shifting. The algorithm now leans towards showing people more of what they are already watching, not necessarily content from channels they've subscribed to, which means YouTube Shorts can behave a lot like Instagram Reels and TikTok. Short clip, hope the algorithm puts it in front of the right stranger, same scroll, same 7 seconds, same problem. The difference is longer form YouTube content still builds deep authority. Someone finds your video through search, they watch for 15 minutes, they trust you more at the end than they did at the start. And that just doesn't happen on Instagram as much. So YouTube can work at both ends. Short content to reach new people and long content to build real trust with people already in your world. But it is a long game, and it only works if you understand what your audience is actually searching for. Which brings me back to Laura. Does a school principal actually go to YouTube and search, how do I support my teachers with restorative practices? Or Does that question only get asked in a room at a conference center? In a conversation with a peer who's already solved the problem? Because if that's where the decision is really made, the best content strategy in the world won't replace you being in that room. Before you use this as a reason to abandon social media entirely, though, I want to be clear about something. Because you know I'm your fairy ads mother, right? I'm not saying social media is dead and you should all go live in the woods. I'm saying organic content and paid ads are not the same sport. Everything I've just said is about organic content, about trying to win the algorithm, about hoping your serious expert level content lands in an entertainment feed. But paid ads is a different conversation. When you run ads, you are not at the mercy of the algorithm deciding whether your content is entertaining enough to show to strangers. You are putting a specific message in front of a specific person at a moment when you have their attention. And if your ad speaks directly to the exact pain your buyer is already feeling, if it stops them mid-scroll because they recognize themselves in it, if your lead magnet then reveals the depth of your expertise and gives them something genuinely useful, social media can absolutely work for you. Even if your niche is professional, even if your buyer is sophisticated, even if you would rather drink bleach than attempt another trending audio trial reel with a strong hook. The ad does the targeting. The lead magnet does the credibility work. And together they can bring in exactly the right person into your world without you ever having to pretend you're an entertainer. But, and this doesn't change, this always stays the same. You still have to know who your buyer is. You still have to understand the specific pain they're feeling. And you have to be able to speak to it so precisely in the ad and in the lead magnet that the right person sees it and thinks, oh, that's me. That's exactly my problem. If you skip that step, the ads won't fix it either. Ads aren't magic. They're a faster way to find out if your message is landing. And if the message is wrong, ads just show you the wrong result faster. So let's make this useful. If your offer isn't selling, before you change a single thing, work through these questions. Question 1, who is actually making the buying decision here? Is it the person who takes your course? Or is it someone else, a manager, a budget holder, a board, a spouse? Because if the person consuming your content and the person signing the check are two different people, your entire sales journey need to be built for the decision maker, not just for the end user. Question 2, how does your buyer actually make a decision like this? Do they scroll social media and impulse buy? Do they research for weeks before they'll get on a call? Do they need peer validation first? Someone they trust that has recommended you? Do they need credentials they can verify before they'll even consider you? The sales journey you create has to match the buying journey your buyer naturally takes. If there's a mismatch, you'll lose them at the same point every single time. And it'll feel like a leads problem when it's actually a buying journey problem. Question 3, can you find 3 people selling something similar to the same buyer successfully through social media? Not speakers, not authors, no one who has a PR person on their team. People selling the way you're trying to sell. If you can't find 3, that's your answer. And that is not failure. That is the most valuable information you can have before you spend another dollar. And question 4. What does your buyer actually say when you ask them directly? This is the one most people skip. Not because they don't know they should do it, but because at first it can feel uncomfortable. Talking to your buyer, interviewing them, asking them straight up and describe how this problem shows up for you. What does the solution look like in your world? How do you make a decision to buy something like this? That conversation will tell you more about why your offer isn't selling than any amount of funnel tinkering. And if you have a list, survey them. I did this recently after the launch of Scale with Ads. I sent a survey to my list, and I learned that most of the people on my list right now want a smaller starter offer first. They're not ready for the full program. They want to dip a toe in. So if you're on my list, watch your inbox this week because I heard you. And that's what happens when you actually ask. Your offer might be brilliant. Your expertise might be completely real. And it still might not be selling. Not because you're bad at this. Not because you need a better funnel. Not because you didn't post enough on Instagram. But because somewhere between the advice and your actual business, the context got lost. The advice assumed your buyer was the one person with a credit card and a Friday deadline. It assumed that showing up consistently on social media would build the kind of authority your buyer needs to see before they'll trust you. And if any of those assumptions don't match your reality, the advice isn't wrong. It just wasn't written for you, for where you're at. And that's the good advice trap. And Laura's story is the clearest example I've ever seen of what it costs. Not because she did anything wrong, but because she was handed a brilliant map for a completely different city. Your one thing before you close this tab, pick one of the 4 diagnostic questions from this episode. Just one. The one that made you a little bit uncomfortable when I asked it. Go find the answer this week, not next month, this week. Because until you know the answer, changing the offer, rewriting the sales page, running more ads, none of it will fix the real problem. This is episode 2 of 7 in the Good Advice Trap series. 7 episodes on advice that sounds right, but sometimes even is right, but that quietly keeps course creators stuck when the context doesn't fit. If you haven't watched episode 1 yet, that's where we started. We talked about email lists, why yours might not be as broken as you think, and the one question you need to answer before you do anything else with it. That episode is linked right here. I'll see you over there. Bye.